Hello and welcome to this week's Elite Audio video, where we have been testing to its envelope of performance the Lindemann Musicbook Source II. In fact, we've gone even so far as to pitch it against one of its main competitors, the HiFi Rose RS150B, which is a very similar device in terms of specification and functionality. To find out how the Lindemann got on, please stay tuned. All is about to be revealed. So welcome to this week's video. We have had a 2-week hiatus of absenteeism, a bit like having as much time off as the ship's cat, as the saying goes. But we have come back packed with knowledge that we have gained from our testing of the Lindemann Musicbook Source II. Just before we get started, I just want to point out that the plan is, moving forward with our videos, we are going to have them every 2 weeks rather than weekly. And this will allow us to put more content that is relevant rather than just churning out a video for the sake of the video. We want to make the content for you guys as interesting as it possibly is and as relevant as we can make it. Hence, in the follow-up from our showroom shootout, we felt it was quite appropriate to carry on with the streamer theme. They are probably the most hotly talked about products and the ones that are in most demand. Certainly our sales records reflect that what you're buying most of right now are streamers, and that also the fact you are mostly interested in how they all compare. Which leads me nicely on to the video this week, which is the Lindemann Musicbook Source II. Now it comes in two formats. The Source II is devoid of a CD drive. There is also a model that has the CD drive included. However, the Source II, you can also connect a CD-ROM to it via the USB input, so that gives you all the CD functionality. And interestingly, which I'm going to come to when I get to the specification part, is that when you connect a CD-ROM drive, the Lindemann will upsample the 16-bit 44.1 signal to full DSD, and in the process remove all jitter, which is something that is unique as far as Lindemann are concerned. So let's start off with the build quality. These are handmade in Germany, and it's obvious from the second you unbox one of these. They feel exceptionally well built. It follows, well, put it this way, it maintains the exact same design that this series of streamers has had from day one. This, of course, is a full DAC preamp and streamer all in one. It also has a built-in moving magnet phono stage, but I will come to that specification later. The build quality is excellent. All the buttons and the main sort of multi-function control wheel, which is on the sort of top right-hand side of the chassis, they've got a real quality feel to them. Even the on-off button, which is on the left-hand side top of the chassis, has a very nice, I would say, purposeful feel to it when you turn it on and off. It's beautifully weighted. Also on the top of the chassis, you will see that there is the Lindemann logo embossed upon that. So even things like the embossed logo on the top of the chassis just adds a nice kind of luxurious touch. And when you look around the whole of the device, it's not just the front panel that is in this beautifully crafted aluminium finish. It goes down the sides, the top, and even round to the rear panel. On some of its competitors, you will find that whilst the front panel might be beautifully made from aluminium, you then sometimes lose that with the steel construction of just the casework, which again for me just shows that Lindemann really care about how you perceive this device when you first handle it. The other aspect, of course, is its physical size, and it's probably one of the more compact devices in its class. If you compare it to its peer group, you will find that it actually gives you a much more compact footprint. I'll bring the dimensions up on screen so you can see precisely what that is. And equally, it seems to do this without any compromise in performance, which for me is one of its key elements, or one of the key elements that make this an exceptionally, I would say, high performing device. It's one of the best in its class, and I've spent the last 2 weeks listening to this device, first of all running it in, and then doing some very serious testing, doing A/B comparisons with the HiFi Rose RS150, which leads me on to the pricing of this. Now, this device comes in at £3,590 with a lot of functionality. The HiFi Rose, in comparison, is almost £700 more expensive. And that's quite a big gap. There's not a huge difference in the specification. The HiFi Rose does offer the HDMI ARC, and also it offers 4K YouTube, whereas the Lindemann doesn't have HDMI, but it does have a built-in moving magnet phono stage, which is the same phono stage that is in the Lindemann Lime Tree phono. So this is a high quality phono stage in a very highly specified digital product. Now, coming on to specifications, this is full DSD 512. It uses the Japanese AKM, it's the 4493 chipset in dual mono configuration, so each channel has its own DAC. It's also got a MEMS femto clock, which then again is designed to remove jitter on all digital inputs. As I mentioned at the start of the video, it upsamples all digital sources to full DSD. And having spoken to Norbert Lindemann about this, he said in the A/B comparisons that they did, when you upsample to full DSD, the audible differences are significant and noticeable. And I have to say, from my own listening of this device, I have been really impressed with it, but I want to come to that in a second. As I also mentioned, it's got a USB input that allows you to attach another streaming device, but most may consider using a CD-ROM drive, thus giving you effectively an external CD player connection. Phono stage I've already covered. And then if we want to come to the actual inputs and outputs, I've already covered the front with the on-off button and the multi-function jog wheel, which covers volume and input selector. To use it as an input selector, you press it down and hold it and rotate at the same time. You can also control it fully from the infrared remote control that is included. And again, that is very simple to use. It uses the multi-function wheel at the top, or circular device if you want to call it that, control buttons up and down for volume, right and left for input selector. You can press the I button, which will tell you about your input, and it also will show that it's being upsampled to DSD as well. You can also turn the device on and off from the volume, the remote control, which again is a nice feature. You can also control it directly from the Lindemann app, which is very good and easy to use. However, let's look at the inputs and outputs from left to right on the rear panel. So first of all, we have 3 analog inputs. The first analog input is the phono stage, and it is clearly marked as such. The next 2 RC inputs are for any analog source. We then come to 2 outputs, standard RCA and then XLR. And we also then have the 2 digital inputs, SPDIF, optical and coaxial. And then on to the right of that, we have got the USB input. You'll see there's 2 antenna connections. One is for Wi-Fi, one is for Bluetooth. We've also got a standard LAN connection if you don't want to use Wi-Fi. And then we've got the standard power in aspect as well. It's very simple to use, and I've got to say, I like that there's nothing complex about using this device. It works just as a normal preamp if that's how you want to use it. And I know even in the preamp stage, which is full analog, that Norbert spent a significant amount of time choosing the quality of this analog volume control. And I know it's a very high-spec Japanese analog device, and that again shows through, because using it as just a pre only and comparing it to other preamplifiers that don't have digital inputs, it performs extremely well. So this is a high-end device, make no mistake about that. And that leads me on to the actual performance itself. So using the Lindemann app is very straightforward. I generally tended to use this using the Tidal Connect function, but it's also a Roon device, so it's Roon ready. You can use it as a Roon endpoint if you've got Roon Core running elsewhere, and you can log into your usual music sources like Tidal and Qobuz, but it does offer Tidal Connect as functionality. Now, if you go into the Tidal app on your mobile device or smart device, and then you hit play, depending on the device, you'll see on the iOS device that I was using, you can press in the top right hand section of the screen, it gives you the option to choose an external device, and then you simply select the Lindemann. It has to be on the same network, obviously, but once that's done, the screen then will display Tidal, and you can control everything straight natively from the Tidal app, and that's a great function of the Lindemann. It's also got multiple ways you can use this, and again, I'll put these up on screen. I don't want to go into great detail because we'll all have our preference when it comes to the streaming service that we're currently using. But performance. Now, the first thing that struck me about the Lindemann is it has such an expansive soundstage. And before I really get into this, I think one thing that we have learned that in this price category, in fact, in all streaming devices, from most manufacturers nowadays, there is no bad device. Our showroom event has proven that it's very much a personal preference, a season to taste, because every single device that we used in the blind testing that the attendees of our event voted on, every device got a vote, meaning that for somebody, that was the best sound. So this is where it's important to understand what you're looking for. Now, for me personally, the Lindemann did a lot of things that I absolutely love. It just has such an expansive soundstage. There is so much air and space. Clarity is phenomenal. The bass extension was very noticeable, and without being overextended, but it was tuneful, rhythmic, and it did have a lot of grip and control over the low frequencies. In the testing that I did, I ran it into the English Acoustics 41C power amplifier, and then into a pair of Revival Audio Atalante 5s, and I loved how it sounded. Now, comparing it to the RS150B, now I've had an RS150B, I would say, almost exclusively in my system for the last 2 years, and I know it extremely well. Sometimes I would say the Rose app isn't always the easiest, and there's things about the Rose app that I find a bit frustrating. And it's things like where, for example, you've done a search for something, or you then flick into, and you get a search match that comes up saying Tidal, so you go into Tidal, then you come out of that and maybe go into Qobuz. When you then, if you close the app down, or even just leave it in standby, so your phone goes into standby mode, when you go back into the app, it's as though it hasn't remembered anything that you've done before, and I do find that a little bit frustrating. However, that's a minor thing, because ultimately how it sounds is the most important thing. I would say the Lindemann app is one of the best sorted and responsive that is currently available, and for the purposes of the listening comparisons, I use Tidal Connect from Lindemann, and then using the Rose app as a direct comparison, Tidal for Tidal. We then tried Qobuz versus Qobuz, again, the same track, and myself and my wife listened extensively over different evenings, different source material, and in each and every, I would say every comparison, we both came to the same conclusion. And interestingly, I was sat listening, I was about to be served a lovely glass of wine, and even from our kitchen, my wife said that she could tell which was the best sound, very clearly which was the best sound, and every time it was a Lindemann. Now, given that this is £700 cheaper than the HiFi Rose, that actually is quite a big statement to make, and something that's quite pertinent, that you can get a device that sounds better Again, suiting my own personal listening preferences and also that of another individual. But in every comparison we did, it seemed that the Lindemann offered more clarity without sounding harsh or clinical or bright, and it offered more bass extension on a like-for-like comparison. Even using Lindemann's own app, when I say that, I mean not using Tidal Connect, the outcome was exactly the same. So it was a fairly conclusive comparison. Now, some of you may listen to the Rose and prefer it, and that again is absolutely fine. There is no right or wrong here. As I said, the Rose has some functionality that the Lindemann doesn't have, but equally the Lindemann does have functionality the Rose doesn't have too. So depending on what your priorities are may sway you one way or the other. The one thing I can say, in my opinion, for £700 less, I believe wholeheartedly the Lindemann is giving you more performance for less money in a much more compact, smaller footprint form factor. You can also get a matching power amp for the Lindemann, so you can get a very beautifully matched preamp DAC streamer with phono stage into a high power, bass tunable, also power amplifier. And it makes a great combination. We will be testing the power amp at some point in our future videos. But as I say, this comparison was all about the streamer. It was very easy to set up. I just used the WPS button to connect it to the network. It took literally seconds and that was it connected. I also tested it in the LAN connection. I couldn't hear any difference between the LAN and the Wi-Fi. They sounded very similar. I've got a strong Wi-Fi connection in my listening room, and it sounded great. There was no difference or discernible difference. The build quality, I would say, is equal on the Rose versus the Lindemann. Aesthetically, the Rose does offer you the big display screen, and some of you might like this. The Lindemann doesn't. It's very much a sort of a mono design in terms of you've got this sort of Lindemann, which they have or have used for some time, this kind of yellowy orange on a black background. And then on the HiFi Rose, you've got the LED display, which gives you the choice of playing album artwork. You can put a clock on it, you can use the VU meters, and obviously we've used it in all of these things. That doesn't change how it sounds, but that aesthetic again might sway you one way. Again, to point out, both are exceptionally good, but for me personally, the Lindemann won through. And if I had to buy one, I would buy the Lindemann. It's costing me less money, and I think it sounds better. Therefore, for me, this is a truly outstanding product at a great price. We need to test it higher up the ladder. I think this might surprise some devices higher up. And with any device that gets that level of score with us in terms of its outright performance, we will quite happily give you a 30-day money-back guarantee so you can try it for yourself and see what you think in your own system. I'll tell you now, if you try it, you will absolutely love it. It's, as I say, it's easy to use, looks great, built great, and sounds fantastic. So there we go, this week's video all wrapped up nicely. The Lindemann, a great product. The Rose is great too. There's no right or wrong, whichever way you decide to go. I've loved having the Lindemann in my system this week. There were so many tracks that I found exceptionally engaging, and it just made me want to listen to more music. And when a device does that, then I know it's doing something extremely well. So as ever, I always have a small favour to ask at this point in the video. If you have enjoyed this video, or indeed any of the videos that we've published previously, please take a few seconds to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It really does mean a great deal to us here at Elite Audio, and thank you to all of you who have already subscribed to our channel. We really appreciate it. It'll be 2 weeks before you see us again, and in 2 weeks' time we will be reviewing one of the Java amplifiers. And I mentioned this from our Munich review, and we'd heard that in the audio solutions room, where we were listening to some of their incredible loudspeakers, and the Java was the amp that was driving them. And so naturally for us, it was logical we want to test that and put it up against some of its direct competition. So look out for that one in 2 weeks' time. So until then, please have a great week listening to music. Thank you for watching, and please take care.